promote economic growth in lower income countries is by investing in agriculture. Up to 3 times more return on investment than any other sector. And the health sector is important, and the education sector, and all of that. But if you invest in agriculture, if you take the steps that the United States did 150 years ago, a little diversion, a little interlude, because this is cool. 150 years ago, who was president? Lincoln was president. What was happening? We had a little civil war going on. But he was able to say, with 25% of the United States population engaged directly in agriculture, we need a Department of Agriculture. So he started the Department of Agriculture. Also, at that point, the Senator Justin Morrill said, we need something to get all this information to the people who need it. So that started the land grant system. Our sesquicentennial continues now. And the idea that a university would serve the public good as a way of making sure that there was a way to connect science with the people who needed it started. If we do that in Malawi, in Tanzania, in Honduras, those people will benefit just like the United States did. So all of that had this whole of government approach that was pretty unique. How do we get those ag scientists working together with the development professionals, with the diplomats, with the folks working with the World Bank on how we're doing our money and contributions? And it hasn't been easy. It takes a lot to get coordinated, especially when you're in your silo and I'm in my silo, but it's worked. So just a few of those results in the almost 3.5 years of Feed the Future, we've been able to help 1.8 million of those farmers. Those small-scale farmers, most of them women, have benefited because they got some improved seed varieties or those kitchen garden type techniques or policy changes or access to markets. All of it from the laboratory to the farm, from the market to the table. If you're working on every segment of that, the folks who are going to benefit are the people who grow the food. And that's what's happened. But the second thing, beyond just ag development, which is a focus of Feed the Future, is nutrition. So 9 million kids in the areas where we've worked, and those areas were selected because they're some of the worst in the world. 9 million kids have benefited from the extra attention to child nutrition. So former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton launched this fabulous initiative called 1,000 Days. Does that come up at all in the conversation? So from conception to a second birthday is about 1,000 days. So from the time of the womb till when you get to blow out 2 birthday candles in our contexts. Almost all of your brain's development happens then. Cognitive development is pretty much finished by the time you turn 2. You don't get any do-overs. If you haven't eaten the right stuff during that period, you're screwed. One of the things that blew my mind is looking at MRIs of brains, one undernourished and one nourished, of 2-year-olds. And you can see the difference. And that gray matter that I waste a lot of never fully develops. So how can we reach those kids especially? What are those? Sweet. One of the things we've done is said to the countries, along with our international partners, what are your top priorities for agricultural-led development and nutrition in your country? So Rwanda was the first one that said, here's our massive plan. Here's what we, the country you're trying to help, want. So right as Ritu said yesterday, you should ask and you should listen. Well, it's taken us a long time to learn that, but that's exactly what we've done. What is it you, Rwanda? What is it you, Tanzania? What is it you, Guatemala, need that we can help with? And then we come alongside and do just that. So, a couple of the future goals that are just so exciting. So at the Department of Agriculture, our contribution to this whole of government effort is around science and research. And we've had this 150-year partnership with land-grant institutions, but also others. So, you know, the competitive grants that we just announced last week, K-State got some, Auburn got some. I was at South Dakota State where they got a grant of about $4 million to look at local hunger and the food policy councils that will address that. Well, that partnership is great. So through that, we've been working with others to map the genomes for a political scientist as opposed to an actual scientist. This is pretty cool stuff. To map the genomes of wheat, of corn, and of the common bean. So about 22 years ago, in the summer between my junior and senior year, I went to Nicaragua. I applied to a number of different sort of short-term missionary programs. I applied to all of them. I didn't care. Whoever was going to take me to the developing world, I wanted to go with. And it was the Presbyterians who wrote first and said, we can send you to Nicaragua. I said, sign me up. So I went and I spent about half of my time with a family of 14 out in the campo. I didn't speak Spanish. I got blisters the first day, and I realized I'm pretty useless. They realized that too, and what they did was they had me just stay at the homestead as all of them went and were productive, went to school or work or errands, and so that nobody would take anything, I stayed around. But one of the things I learned is they ate beans and rice every day, every meal. I like beans and rice. But wow, it gets a little old. Especially those of us used to eating breakfast like we just had, or cereal or eggs or whatever. Beans and rice for breakfast? But if that bean had just a little more protein, if that bean was able to grow with a little less water, wow. What an amazing development in our efforts to reduce undernutrition and hunger, to benefit small-scale farmers who are growing those beans. Same with wheat, same with corn, same with others. So we're working with the Chiquita banana folks to do the same thing with mapping the banana genome. Wow. Again, for those of you who are actual scientists or learning to be, that's not as cool as it is for me who has no clue how that happens. But that's what's happening now because we've coordinated an effort. Another part of where we're moving is to be even more efficient in our food aid. So part of how it works is we pool our taxpayer dollars. About 1 penny of every dollar that we contribute to Uncle Sam goes to overseas development and humanitarian programs. It's tiny. When you do a poll, people less informed than this audience say, oh yeah, I think it's about 20, 25 cents. Well, what do you think it should be? Oh, I think it should be 10, 12 cents. Less than 1 penny. Less than 1%. So, how do we get a little more bang for the buck? As opposed to, let's say, buying wheat here in Kansas, getting it shipped to the Missouri or the Mississippi River, down the river to New Orleans, then on a boat all the way to Mombasa, Kenya, to then get up to Dadaab refugee camp on the Somali border to feed kids there? Wait a minute, they're growing wheat in Uganda. It would be a little better there, but the way things work, politics being what it is, that's how our system is set up. So how can we get a little more money out of that is one of the things that we're also looking at. And then finally, and this is the last of the examples of what we're doing. We, in Washington, D.C., have hit a few bumps in the road of cooperation. So it's good for me every once in a while to get out of this place that is 62 square miles completely surrounded by reality, to get to reality. And our members of Congress have not been able to agree on many things, but one of the cool examples of a little while ago when it was different is George McGovern, who just passed away last year, ran for president as a Democrat in 1972, and Bob Dole, who from Russell, Kansas, ran for president as a Republican in 1996. They didn't agree on much. When McGovern ran for president, Bob Dole was chair of the Republican National Committee, and the way McGovern would describe it, he would take a bite out of me for breakfast and he would take a bite out of me for dinner. And then, of course, McGovern wasn't supporting him when he ran against President Clinton. But they came together in the final chapter of McGovern's life, and unfortunately, Bob Dole is